So I'm really excited to have four such amazing community leaders who've been leading community, fostering community in very different roles with different lenses and experiences be on our panel discussion today. I'll be introducing Arianna, who will be moderating a panel discussion. So really excited to host Arianna today. Arianna is a creative director, advisor, and artist with over 20 years experience working on both coasts for startups and Fortune 500 companies, leading brand marketing and product work. Her recent client list includes Lyft, Twitter, Mozilla, NerdWallet, and Thumbtack. Definitely names that most of you would have heard about. Arianna is also the co-founder of Invisible Talks, a conference for creative professionals that celebrates the art of design. She also frequently writes on the subject of creativity, and her work has been featured in prestigious publications such as Co-Design, 99U, and Forbes. So let's, sitting on our couches, have a big round of applause to welcome Arianna Orland, our moderator for today's panel discussion. So let's have Arianna walk up to our virtual stage. Now. Yay! There she is. Thank you so much, Arianna.
Hello. Thank you, Preet, for that kind intro. That was really nice of you. And yes, I want to say good morning from California. But I also know that I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good everything. I was really heartened to see all the introductions in the Slack channel this morning. And so I want to say hello to Pavan in India, Michael in Kyoto, Maria in Uruguay, Abina in Calgary, Elise in Sweden, and also hello to all the dogs and cats. We have June, we have Rory, we have Floki, who had a really cute outfit on. And also a special shout out to Krispy Kreme, the hedgehog, who's also joining us today. So as Preet said, I'm Arianna, and I'm here today with Margaret, Mia, and Tanner. And I'm hoping that they can put on their cameras and that everyone will be able to see them. Hi, y'all. All right.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, good morning. So before we get started, I did want to thank Preet and Chantal and the entire Remote Design Week team. As an event organizer myself, doing something like this in 6 weeks, adapting to this medium and all the work that has gone into this, I bowed down to them, and I am certain that they've set some kind of Guinness Book of World Record for the amount of effort that they put into making today. So thank you. Round of applause. Yay. So, when Preet suggested the topic of this panel, my first thought was there's so much to talk about, and there's so much to talk about right now. Do we talk about the status quo? Do we talk about the emergent properties of community, during a crisis? What about leadership and community? What about introversion and community? And, my head just started to go to all these different places. And then I realized, that's what a panel's for. It's to touch on some of these topics. And, my hope is that that's what we're going to do today. And although these times are very troubling, there are also these moments of beauty in them. And I feel like we're all experiencing one of those today. We're all connected through technology because of this moment in time. And, I'm really appreciative for everyone who's here, and especially our panelists. So I think that hopefully the Remote Design Week team has let you all know that you should be asking questions in the Swap Card app in the event, in our particular event. And we'll be spending about 40 minutes talking to each other, answering some questions that I have. And then I'll do my best to sprinkle maybe some of your questions in, but if not, we'll definitely have time at the end for all of your questions. And now I'd like to start with the intros. We'll do Margaret, Mia, and then Tanner. And if you could tell everybody your name, what you do and what you're looking forward to about today's conversation.
Sure, thanks. That was a really lovely introduction, by the way. My name is Margaret Lee. I lead a program called UX Community and Culture at Google. I founded this program 4 years ago as a way to invest in UX as a discipline at, a big company with a big sprawling UX organization. And when I started the program, I had already been at Google for 9 years leading the Google Maps UX team. I'd seen how the company and the UX organization had grown and evolved over the years, and had invested a lot of my 20% time in improving things like job ladders or bringing people together who would otherwise not have an opportunity to work together. So I knew that investing in the community with just a little bit of intention could really go a long way. And that's what I do today. And that's why I'm super excited to be here today to join you as well.
Awesome. Mia?
Thanks for the intro. I'm Mia Blume. I lead a company called Design Department, and we focus on providing tools, experiences, support mainly for design leaders. And a few years ago, I also started Within, which is a retreat and community for women in design leadership. So really started this a few years ago out on my own after realizing there was such a gap in support for what we do and ultimately wanting to see a better design world. I thought if I could support more creative leaders in getting to that place, then we would achieve that. So excited to explore what community means in all these different vectors today.
Welcome. Wonderful. And Tanner, bring us home.
Really excited to be here. Look at this panel. This is incredible. Each one of you are heroes of mine, so it's an honor to be on stage here with you. For those who don't know me, I'm Tanner Christensen. I am currently head of design at GEM, a startup here in San Francisco. And that means that I sit on the kind of the bridge between IC or individual contributor work and management, which means that I have to take both perspectives into my day-to-day job. And really how I got here was, I've worked at companies like Lyft, Atlassian, Facebook. I have built a lot of my own apps successfully, co-founded some companies and things. And I like to say that I'm self-taught, but the reality is that no one really teaches themselves. We learn through other people around us, guides, mentors, books, things like that. And so that's kind of why I'm excited about this conference and speaking here today, is to contribute back to the community and kind of share a little bit of my insight and the lessons I've learned and kind of help level up the next generation, really.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think, Margaret, you had said a little goes a long way. And Tanner, really touching on learning through the people around us. And I could not agree more. So with that, let's do like an easy question first, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of it. So I would like to know where you're located now, and what you're willing to share about the real about your setup. So I'll go first. I know this looks amazing. However, I'm in my laundry room, which is also my closet. And I pinned my desk setup, which is on my washing machine, to my Twitter handle if y'all want to see it. So that's what's going on in my world. Tanner, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate because I finished this at-home office detached from my house right before things hit the fan. So I'm just sitting at home in my nice space, which we also use for podcasting. So that's where the mics are behind me.
And where's home?
I'm in Redwood City, California, just south of San Francisco.
Nice. Mia, what about you?
Since I started my company a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to create space in our house to have a dedicated office, but that doesn't mean that there's still not boxes below the camera that you can't see. so that's there, but also there's some art from Arianna.
Oh, that's
nice. I'm in Rinda, California, so north of Berkeley. So if you hear any strange sounds, it's probably the wild turkeys outside my window.
Awesome. Margaret, what about you? Where are you?
I'm based in Alameda, California. It's a small island town on the east of San Francisco. And I live in an old Victorian, and I was lucky enough to kind of claim a space separate from the kids and the husband and but not the dog. So Kimchi the golden doodle may wander into view at some point today.
What's the golden doodle's name?
Kimchi.
Oh, Kimchi. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm really hoping Kimchi makes a cameo. Okay. So now let's get to the meat of the discussion. And I would actually like to know from all three of you, what led you to the work that you do today? For Mia, it's my observation that you had a career change. You were taking client work and working at Square and in design leadership positions, and you made this big change. Margaret, I can only imagine what you've experienced at Google. I think
it's all true.
In your bio, it says that I think the team when you started was like 3 people. And I have no idea how big it is now, but I imagine it's on a Google scale. And you went from, leading an org within the company to actually sort of leading this organization within the company that now, fosters community. And I think that's so interesting. And then Tanner, for you, I feel like, you just took this head of design role. And so like in name, maybe you've just been recognized as a leader, but I really see you as a person who, just from this organic perspective, is such a contributor and has been for so long, and a steward for so long, in this really organic way. And so I'm really interested to hear what drew you all to this space of making community. Tanner, you want to start? Okay, Margaret, you go.
Okay. Well, what I found was that I was doing this stuff on the side a lot anyway, in some form or another, obviously not at the same scale, because it is kind of a natural part of leadership to want to make things better for the organization at large. So just after a certain point, I just felt like maybe I can just do this full time instead of on the side, and took a chance. And it seems to be working so far. Knock on wood.
And do you see that as also right place, right time? Never having worked at Google, but sort of observing from the outside, Google was not known for design, and something happened. Many things happened internally.
Many things, yeah.
I'm sure many things. We could probably do 5 days of our own remote conference discussing that. But many things happened. That kind of sort of created maybe this foundation in a way, and I'd love to know maybe just a little bit more about that.
Sure. And to be clear, it was like when I started, it was 3 people on the Google Maps team that I was running, not the entire UX org, but still the entire UX org when I started was maybe 100, and it's like 40 times that size now.
Oh my gosh.
And so with that kind of growth, right, also came a lot of evolution of the role itself. It used to be a lot of generalists, kind of, even coding, to the full stack of what you know as UX today, with all the functions within design and research and writing and program management and front end engineering and everything. So it really evolved and grew pretty rapidly. And anytime you have that, you have to have some kind of intentional investment in the culture. Otherwise it can go Frankenstein. It might be fine, but like if you're intentional about it, you can actually move it in a direction that is positive, and amplifies the effect. So I don't know if that answers your question, but like I felt like it was a little bit of having observed a lot of it over the years and what could be done, and then feeling like the time was ready for me personally to want to make a change. And it just felt like, what, I'm gonna propose this and let's do it.
Yeah. And how much do you think the relationships that you had cultivated contributed to that?
I think it helped a lot. I mean, essentially, we're talking about people when you talk about community, and, you need to understand the community through interacting with it. So I think it was definitely a big part.
Yeah. Awesome. Tanner, how about you?
Yeah. How did I get to where I am, or what kind of drove me here?
Yeah.
So kind of like what Margaret said, where there's this desire to improve things around us. I think, all designers typically have that trait. They want to improve something. But I think when it comes to like leadership, you're looking not at like, what can this user interaction solve? What can this product solve? You're saying, what can this organization, what can this team improve? So for me, it's always been that. Like, I want to do the same kind of work that I do in my product work, building really good products that can influence, millions of people, but then look at how I can scale that. Because if I can help 1, 2, a dozen people do their job better, suddenly my impact has multiplied. So that's kind of how I've always thought about it. And on top of that, kind of going back to what I was saying in my introduction, I had to teach myself pretty much everything, how I learned design, programming, leadership. I didn't go to school for any of this. I didn't really have any formal mentors. So I kind of relied on communities to help me get to where I am today. And as I went through that journey, I learned that if I can give back, other people can do what I've done. And that's something that I really feel passionate about. Seeing what the community has done for me, how can I give that to other people as well?
Yeah, and I really see you kind of put your money where your mouth is, to borrow that expression. But, how many people did you sponsor to come to Remote Design Week? Was it?
I think it was only 20.
Only 20? That's incredible. That's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I try to give back wherever I can.
And you really do that. And I see that. I see that, Tanner. I see you. Mia, how about you? I'd love to know more about kind of that switch and what drew you to the focus that you have now.
Yeah, so I spent most of my career working as a product designer in some form of leadership or management role. My last 2 roles were leading design teams and research teams at hypergrowth startups. So after 2 back-to-back hypergrowth startups, I needed a little bit of a break. So during that break, that's when I started to take on a little bit of consulting here and there to bridge that gap. And I very quickly started to realize I didn't want to be consulted anymore. I was at IDEO for a really long time and enjoyed that, but that's not the world that I was in. And very quickly that turned into actually a full-time coaching practice. So a lot of kind of iterating and learning along the way. And through that practice, I started to see a lot of the patterns and gaps that I had experienced in my own career of lack of support, lack of clarity around tools for us. There's lots of stuff for engineers, but less so for the creative community. So that's when I started creating those through a design department. And just like any design process, it's been a nice little journey of iteration and learning and building. And so now we've got all these different offerings and tools and things that we can share across the community. And the great thing is we continue to learn through that because we're seeing, kind of leadership through the lens of all of these incredible people. We get to see what's going on out there.
Yeah. And I don't remember which came first, within or design department, or which came first publicly, who even knows. But I'm interested because, you had said that you were exploring these different mediums and these different formats. And I'd love to know a little bit more about maybe the relationship between the two and history, if you think it's pertinent, or any way that you'd like to answer the question.
Yeah. Design department technically started first, but I'd always had this feeling of wanting to get more women and non-binary folks together because I just felt like there's just this common experience that we tend to have, certainly our own varied experiences, but this common thread and story. And I just had this dream that I wanted to bring these people together because as an extreme introvert, I actually hate networking events. Like most conferences, I do not like to go to because it doesn't feel like there's that deep connection. So Within was really about creating a space where we could truly be ourselves, where we may not feel that day to day at our work or in our offices, and to build true connection, not just networking. In fact, I banned the word networking from our team's vocabulary as we built within, so that we could create a space where people could truly just show up as we are and learn from one another and go on an interesting journey together.
And when you say dream, literal or figurative or both?
A little bit of both. Like I just imagined a group of women gathering under the stars in the desert. And I mean, Margaret can attest that that's basically what we built.
Yeah, and you did that. Yeah, that's incredible. Okay.
You did an amazing job too. I've been lucky enough to attend and it's incredible. Like you realized your dream, Mia, seriously.
Thanks.
Aww. That's beautiful. Oh, you guys, I wish we could all hug. Let's see. I do see a question coming in. Oh, interesting. Okay. I'm going to wait on these, and I'm going to ask you all another question, and then hopefully we can weave some of these in. Okay. So from my perspective, I really, when I think of community and I think of the work that you all do, I think of, fostering, stewarding, shaping, leading, nurturing, is how I would describe, what we're all doing. And I wonder how these words show up in your day-to-day work, and if they resonate for you, if there are other words that you might describe what you do.
I often think of it actually as like gardening, is more of an analogy, not as the word that I use at work, but let's garden, kids. But it really is, to me, a lot like specifically organic gardening, right? So not like I'm not spraying Roundup on the weeds to get rid of all the things I don't want, because actually weed is just really like an unwanted plant that competes with something that you'd rather have. So like in a community, you might have something that you kind of want to steer the culture away from, but you can't just, spray Roundup on it, right? Like, because it needs something else to replace it, whatever the need was that it was fulfilling. So I find it like really interesting to have that constant dynamic between what already exists in the system and how you're trying to advance it forward, because, it's not something that you build from the ground up. You have to constantly work with what's around you. So I always think of this as this kind of gardening and cultivating. Like I think about cultivating a culture. The culture is kind of the conditions of the soil, and the community is like the plants that can flourish within the culture, right? So I feel like it's both, and that's, anyway, there you go, gardening.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's really beautiful. I think for many of us who are fortunate enough to have a little bit of dirt outside of our shelter in place locations, being able to connect with the natural world, I think is resonating a lot more for folks. And the idea of a garden is so beautiful because it needs things from you all the time, and you must adapt to its conditions. Yes. And it's a relationship. Exactly. And it's a long-term relationship. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Mia and Tanner, did you all want to address that?
Sure. I think all of those words resonate, but the two modes that I tend to be in the most is teaching explicitly, but more so than not, even through my coaching and events, I like to say holding space. So much of what we do as coaches is create a safe space for people to explore. We try and extend that into our teaching. And then that's really what our events are for as well, right? So being able to hold this space for people to show up, to explore, to have the ups and downs, cry or not, doesn't matter. But I would say most of my time is really about holding space, which is interesting, as we think about how do we support our teams and how do we support our community. Maybe we'll get to this later, but it requires a lot of energy, even though it seems like such a quiet, small act, to be present and to support people through whatever's happening.
Yeah, I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about that? So, a lot of my questions I'm now realizing are, asking you about your work, but I don't think I have any questions about asking anyone what it feels like. And I sort of like the idea of what you were sharing there. Would you like to discuss that a little bit more? Yeah.
So just to give you context, when I'm coaching, I'm usually doing hour-long sessions over video chat with my clients, usually back-to-back with some breaks in between. So most days that might be 6 or 7 coaching sessions, which I've gotten used to. It's a lot. Wow. It's more than 6 or 7 meetings in terms of energy spent, because you're full on. You are listening at a level that you normally don't in meetings, because you might check out or take some notes. And so fully present and holding that space and helping people just explore whatever challenges they're facing, because the reality is there's no right or wrong in most of this, with a few like legal exceptions. And so it's really about holding the space for people to feel, to understand, to explore, the brainstorm, right? All the things that we kind of do in trying understanding those experiences. And so being present and holding that safe space for one person, especially now, is incredibly exhausting. I definitely find that I cannot do as many sessions right now as I used to. It's just really depleting. And I find that the community events are kind of the same thing. When we hold a retreat, it's 60 or 90 people. And it's the same kind of philosophy. I'm holding a space for everyone to be there. Our team is holding the space for people to explore, express, and really relate to one another. And that means that we have to be fully present in a way that I think most meetings in my office job was not the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Very astute observation. And I hadn't really thought about that kind of next level that you need to go to really truly hold space for people. Tanner, did you want to take a swipe at that question about the adjectives and yeah,
one of the words you use that keeps sticking out in my mind is shaping. And I think like my gut reaction to shaping as a leader is I imagine many people approach that saying, how do I shape this community? How do I shape these individuals? But kind of like what Margaret said and Mia both said, you're not really shaping the individuals. You're creating space for them. You're giving them what they already need in order to make them grow and do what they need to do. So when I think about shaping, it's more of how do you shape the environment? Kind of like what Mia was exactly saying. How do you shape the conversations, the forum, so that people can get what they need to do what they need to do to grow, right? So I think that's a core part of like my experience, especially now in a startup as their first designer trying to build this design culture in the company. It's not something that I tackle by going immediately to person. It's creating space, creating the environment, and giving like resources so that this thing can happen naturally for these individuals.
Yeah. I think since we're kind of on this topic, another question that I've had for you all is about the insights that you've developed. So, you know, Mia, you've been working with the design department and within for 5 or 6 years now. Margaret, you know, you've been in this more formal role for, I think you said 3 years, but you've been tending this garden for quite some time. Tanner, you know, yourself, like, again, I just see you as a person who from the jump wanted this professionally and worked your heart out to find the communities and, you know, to eventually start cultivating them on your own. And I'd love to know some of the insights that you have in doing this kind of work. And maybe we'll start with Tanner.
Yeah, it's funny to call this an insight because it may be obvious to many people. I don't know. But one thing I've really learned over the last few years is that you're not going to make everyone happy. And you really need to start embracing that, because when you join these communities, when you take the reins of a community, when you try to contribute and like drive change, there are going to be people who don't fit in that community, who don't align with your vision, who don't want to contribute in the ways that you think that community needs. And so you need to become very strong in accepting that not everyone's going to be part of that community, and that's okay. They'll have their own communities that they can go to. What matters for you is finding the communities where you can contribute and help grow and learn yourself from. So I think that's a big insight that I've learned.
Mia or Margaret, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah. I don't know if my situation is a little different because I'm doing this for an internal community that is big enough that we can't know everybody, and you know, we're distributed around the globe, but at the same time we have this nature of like being pretty much a stable community within a company. So the thing that I find is how motivated people can be to contribute on an ongoing basis. Like they will invest if they feel like it's clear what the goal is. And again, like creating the conditions, just like, you know, here are some possibilities, just kind of helping to shape that. There's that word. And another word might be to help activate the community, because really like the motivations and the talents and the passions are all there. It just needs to kind of get ignited or activated or whatever. And people have huge hearts. They want to contribute. And we've seen that in the past couple of months, you know, how people really want to come together to help internally, communities in their local neighborhoods, you know, in the industry. So hearts are big, which are it's just so refreshing to see.
Yeah, heart is a big one. And I think one that we're all really feeling in different ways in our lives right now. And yeah, and you know, from my perspective, there is a generosity in it, but there's also a reciprocity in the generosity, which I find very motivating too. Mia, would you like to answer this one?
I mean, I could talk all day about what we've learned about design and leadership, but I think from the community perspective, the main thing that I've learned is that community needs purpose too. So it's not just enough to bring community together around shared interest or shared qualities, which I think a lot of kind of community hubs end up being, but it needs purpose. So just like a meeting with your team that's working on a project, if you run into a meeting and you have no agenda or clear purpose, like that's not going to go well. And so really, how do you bring together or activate that community through a shared purpose of any scale?
Yeah. Since we can't see everybody, I was going to ask for a show of hands of how many people will be going to meetings today without agendas. I probably
we'll just assume about 75%.
Yeah, it's probably low, but yeah. Okay. All right. So next question. How do you go from being an individual community member to a leader? Like, where would I start? If you know, I had this inkling, this generosity, and maybe a sort of unspoken desire, how do you go from, you know, being just a person to a person who takes this on? And I'd love to know, from your experience, what advice you might give to folks out there who are inspired by what we're talking about right now and who see a need and who have a purpose.
I would say find the connector in your company or in your, you know, your sphere of folks. Like, find the person who tends to connect other people and tell them what you're interested in doing and see if they have ideas of who else you should connect with. Because usually it starts with like a connection and then ideas emerge and possibilities happen. But
yeah, that's great advice. Tanner?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts here.
Lay it on us.
Primarily because what I often see from people who want to be established as leaders, they want people to follow them in some capacity. What they do is they'll go to a community and they'll just blast that community. Here's my latest blog post. Here's a video I created. Here's my thoughts on this thing. And they think that is contributing. And in a way, of course, that is contributing. But that's not what makes someone a leader. And that's not what like drives a community, right? What drives a community is showing up, surely. But by showing up, you need to also listen. And you need to be viewed as kind of a resource that others can fall back on, not just someone who's blasting a lot of useless information. This is the same for the world of parenting. I'm not a parent, but I've got a lot of research into this, as well as managing a team formally, where your job isn't just to like give the child everything they need. Your job is to help them figure out how to get the thing they need on their own. And so oftentimes you can't just show up and like share things. You need to do that, but you also need to say, hey, that is interesting. I feel your pain. I understand this. I hope this community can help you. I'm here to contribute in that capacity as well, not just to pull something out of it. So definitely show up, but show up as a good listener. Show up as a resource that others can rely on. Don't just like try to get your reputation out there.
Yeah, someone actually asked a question on community leadership. How do you separate or make sure that you're doing things for the community and stay away from the pitfall of narcissism of being a leader in a community? So, you know, I think that definitely touches on that. Would you elaborate to answer this question more, or do you feel good about what you've said?
Yeah, like I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with having an objective of saying, I want to be a community leader, but you really need to evaluate what is driving you to do that. If you want to like just build out your own reputation, if you want to become a thought leader because that's how you want to make money or something, community is probably not the right way to do that. You probably need to go into marketing and build your personal brand. Communities are much better when you approach it from the perspective of, how can I not only get something from this group, but really give back to the broader community? Like, how can I really help people here? And what am I going to get in return? And that kind of that mutual relationship is what's going to help you grow and become that leader, and also help the community understand that you are someone they can rely on over time.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Mia, would you like to answer this one, or I have another question for you after this? So Mia's choice.
We can go to the next question. I feel like we're covering that pretty well.
Okay. You are a self-proclaimed introvert. And I think a lot of folks out there have questions about how do you, if community is about participation and about, kind of bringing that heart, but you have to do it with other people. It's sort of inherent in the definition. What are the steps that you would take, or how do you overcome that? Or what advice would you give to people who want to participate, but also, have to navigate their own personal orientation to doing stuff like that?
Yeah. So I think there's two things. The first one is just understanding your own energy really well. What gives you energy? What depletes your energy? So even if you don't prescribe to introvert, extrovert, or any of that sort of language, like stuff gives us energy, and then we have to, gather that energy somehow, and really understanding that. I think, my kind of burnout from startups taught me a lot, that I realized that I was giving so much to other people. I wasn't, generating enough for myself. And so really I've learned a lot about what it means to have resilience, and that you can't constantly be sprinting. You have to be investing in your own resilience. And right now I've been talking about with a lot of our teams, how do you build resilience, not only for yourself as a leader, but also for your community or your team, because we're going to be in this for a long haul, right? Unfortunately. And adapting to that change and the energy needs and shifts of everyone on the team means really you have to go back to that resilience. That's at our inner kind of source, whether you want to use a metaphor or not for this. I use a few, like your gas tank, your battery, right? And so there's always the capacity there for resilience. It's just, are we feeling enough, and balancing that so we can be fully present and intentional when we're with our teams or community.
Are there any resources that a person can look to kind of go deeper on assessing their capacity, or how did you kind of develop that muscle?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do simple things around like energy mapping with folks on our teams, but really understanding different ways that you can invest in your resilience, I think, is the most important thing, and experimenting. And so we talk about 4 areas of potential resilience development. The first one is our mindset. The second one is our wellness, so both physical and mental. The third one is connection, so community certainly. And the last one is purpose, so being aligned and having a reason for. And so those 4 areas are the ones that we invest in the most. But the most important thing is that you find what works for you. So maybe yoga works for you, maybe it doesn't. It really doesn't matter which self-care or tools you use to build your resistance, as long as you're investing in it over time. And I've been really clear with folks lately, because we're teaching a few resilience workshops right now, that we don't have to do everything. It's okay, especially right now, to, if you need to like flop on the couch and chill out, maybe that's what you need, and being okay and compassionate about that. But finding one thing, even if it's just breathing, as a way to be still, be resilient, and invest in your own energy.
Yeah, I know that yoga works for me. It's just a question of getting my butt in gear to do it.
Well, it's especially hard right now, and that's okay, right? Like, that's okay. We're all in it together.
Totally. Let's see. I want to make sure that we get to some of the questions from folks who are watching, and we definitely will. So why don't we just do that right now? We've had a couple questions about diversity and inclusion, and I want to make sure that we definitely address the topic. So there's a kind of a 2-part question here, and I'll just read both of them, and then hear from you all about how you would address. So these are separate questions, but I feel like since we're on the topic, I'll just put it out there for you all. So can you all share how diversity, equity, and inclusion plays a part in your role as a community leader? And the other question is, do you have any insights or observations about the state of design leadership for people of color, how can we introduce more diversity and inclusion into the design community, particularly at senior levels? So I'd love to give you all the floor.
I can start. One of the core areas that my team focuses on is thinking about, people in terms of trying to attract great people, but also keeping people that are already in Google developing and happy, and give them a growth career, regardless of, the background or whatever. But we did have to explicitly carve out, a track for diversity, equity, inclusion, just so that we made sure that there was intention in it, because it's too easy, I think, to think about like all the aspects of development and attracting talent without explicitly thinking like, how can we do better in this area? So we look at it not just as like an individual set of programs that we want to invest in, but also as like a lens on everything that we do. So I think that it takes a lot of intention if you're trying to change a culture. Again, it's not as easy as just like a magic bullet. Like it takes intentional weaving in so that the mindset can shift, so that everybody who's responsible for any kind of decision that might affect this can start to think, about this in a more natural way rather than as like some mandate from the top or whatever. So I think it's an ongoing process. Like there's no kind of quick answer for that, unfortunately.
I would say the core thing for me has been really understanding my privilege so that I can use that to support other folks and be aware of where I am and where they are at, which has really fundamentally changed how I think about supporting, teams and communities. So for instance, I'm a big fan of sponsorship over mentorship and other programs like that. Because really at the end of the day, it's about helping people get to that place rather than telling them how I got to that place, because it may not apply at all. And so that's why I actually don't mentor. I only coach or I only sponsor when I have those opportunities, because I find that those are much more elevating and powerful moments. It's hard. I feel like we're always learning together. And so as long as, kind of like Margaret was saying, we're continuing to be intentional and cultivating and learning together, then we'll get closer. But we have a long way to go still.
Yeah, I'd piggyback on both of those thoughts. At least, for the first part of the question, like, what is the state of diversity in design leadership? I think it's pretty apparent that we're still doing a really poor job, and for many reasons. Honestly, this question alone could have an entire hour-long panel by itself. It probably deserves one, honestly, but we're not doing so great. From my own perspective, how I'm trying to just evolve here a little bit, especially as like a white male, I've cut back who I'm following on Twitter, for example, considerably to just 20 people, and I'm prioritizing getting perspectives from those who might I can learn from, and also like building opportunities for them and connecting them. Margaret talked a lot about connecting and connectors. I think being that connector, if you are in a place of leadership, is kind of your job. So that's something that I proactively do and look to others in leadership roles to do as well.
Yeah, beautifully said, everyone. And thank you to the audience members for those questions. Please keep them coming. We have about, I think 15 minutes left. And I want to make sure that we are able to address even more questions from all of you. But I have some here on this handy paper, so I'm going to keep asking them, and I'm going to keep a lookout for the questions that you all surface. So, okay, this is kind of a tough one, but one that I think we do need to talk about, which is I'd love to know how your perspective has changed in the last 2 months. So, building community and coming from a heart-centered place, and having this be something that was just kind of happening, in our lives, and maybe, things that we were oriented to in the status quo is one thing. Thinking about community now, we're just in an entirely different world. And I wonder if your perspective has changed, and if so, in what ways?
Yeah, for me, honestly, my perspective has not changed, because I grew up in a time where I really found my communities through the internet. Like, this is just par for the course for me personally. I think like you all, I'm also an introvert. I get a lot of my energy from being alone and having that dedicated time to just be thoughtful and reflective. But I've always found that when I'm ready to learn something new or contribute or really evolve myself, I can rely on digital communities to do that. So nothing's really changed for me, honestly, in that regard.
I never would have thought you were an introvert. I'm so interested to hear that.
I'm very much an introvert. I
Wow.
do not like to go to conferences. I do not like meetups, but yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Interesting. I'm learning so much about everyone. Margaret or Mia, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, even before this whole working from home craziness started, I had been kind of thinking about how community is this unsolvable. It's not a solvable, it's not even a problem, right? But it's not something to be solved. It's just something to ongoingly cultivate, nudge in the right direction, and because it's so complex. And if anything, this just really underscores how complex community can be, and how, my role is one that requires constant adaptation. So anybody interested in doing any kind of community work, it's all about adaptation, and not getting too precious about anything, and being willing to throw things out and just experiment for the future, because the future is like constantly shifting. So yeah, it just kind of reinforced a lot of that for me.
We are getting a few questions around. Kind of both of these are similar, so I'll give them both to you. How do people who are less experienced, not leaders, how can they contribute to community, and how can they contribute and foster community? And is there something that they can be doing? And then the other sort of related question is, how can people at any level foster community and culture within the org that they work in? What are some tips for people early in career designers to contribute to community at their company?
I'll start with the kind of larger community question. So regardless of whether you're a manager, leader, whatever it is, I would start with the purpose. So what do you want to achieve by connecting through community? And then look for those communities, because most likely they exist already. You don't have to build one from scratch. And quite frankly, most of these communities don't make a lot of money. So if you have time and energy that you want to contribute to them, I'm sure the leaders of those communities would welcome you with open arms. So I'd start there and say, hey, how can I support this existing community or activate different aspects of this community and to be a part of it? And then naturally you will become a leader by just being active and engaged in it. I wanted to make a small note about the last question. I think it's important to acknowledge that not all communities will show up the way that they used to right now in this time, and it's okay. I was talking to some community leaders about, we're not getting enough engagement, we need to drive growth, and and I was like, well, wait a second, like, things are not normal, and it's okay that it's not normal. So it might be, to Margaret's point, a time to adapt and really understand how to shift. Like, what do we need to do to be present for our communities right now? And I think, there's lots of opportunities if you're looking for a way to step into these communities right now to support them.
Yeah, great points. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'd love to add on to the, in addition to the sense of purpose, which, I completely agree with, like that has to be the starting point. But for somebody who wants to organize maybe community within their team, one thing that's great is, what's a good shared sense of purpose to help some other community in need is often a great way to also build the sense of camaraderie and community in your own team. So at Google, we have this, event every year where everybody can choose amongst, any number of community projects, like literal community projects within the physical community, and give back as a team. And it's great because you build that sense of community within your team while you're contributing to community. And then I think that the other thing to recognize is that everybody's going to bring something different to the table. Once you figure out, like, yes, this is a purpose I'm interested in, everyone's coming with a different skill, right? And tendency. Some people might be really great at collaborating. That's why they want to be there, is because they get to meet other people they can design with, and other people want to teach others, right? Run a class or speak or, make something or organize things, so there are a lot of skills that people bring. And if you bring the right mix of those skills, you have an amazing, potential event like Remote Design Week. Who knows what can come of it, right?
Yeah, so true. Well, speaking of communities, they're sort of the ones that we're a part of and the ones that we admire from afar. Tanner, you made the point that you didn't go to design school and you learned everything about design, or quite a majority of things that you know about design, through the communities that you found. So I'd love to hear from you all about some of your favorite design communities, Slack groups, book clubs, otherwise, that folks should know about now. Where's the hotness? Where's the good stuff?
Definitely DesignX, of course, who are putting on this event. That's definitely one. And then there's a Slack channel that I actually just co-founded called designleaders.team. If you go there, it's for anyone who is bridging that gap between IC and management, or you're an early manager, or you're looking to lead. Actually, going back to the last question, if you are more junior, but you really want to become a leader, this is a great community for you to join.
Awesome.
I love the Within community. Thanks to Mia. I love having that safe space to just connect. And, there's a lot of benefit to having a place with a lot of psychological safety. And I wish that could be true for all communities, but yeah, that would be one.
Mia?
I mean, I actually found through this a new community of event organizers, including with Brett, as we all navigated the chaos that none of us were prepared for as event organizers. It was just so nice to have folks who understand the nuances and the financial risk and all the craziness that's been going on for us. So if you are interested, that might be a community that you can join. I'm sure we can share that around. But also, I checked out Quarantine Book Club the other day, and lots of people have been talking about that. If you can sit down and actually read, which I admit I'm struggling with right now, but if you can, or at least get halfway there, that's a great space to just take your mind off of everything that's going on and have really deep conversations.
Yeah, they are programming the heck out of that. I mean, I think there's one. Is there one every day or 3 times a week or something like that? It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. Quarantine Book Club, y'all. Mike and Erica from Mule are putting it on, and they're pulling together just absolutely great programming. Because we have another minute here, Margaret, you touched on psychological safety, and we didn't have really we didn't focus much on the qualities that make up a community. But when you mentioned psychological safety and what you get out of your the Within community that you're a part of, that Mia founded, it made me think. I wonder if we could just spend a minute or two talking about the qualities of community, and maybe jumping off with the idea of psychological safety.
I think the thing that I've seen both in communities like Within that start with the sense of purpose, but also in the last couple of months, I've been really impressed with how people that I work with, both my direct team that I work with on a daily basis, but also the larger, broader org of thousands that I don't actually work with every day, but just how real everybody's felt like they could be. And a lot of the leaders are very real in their communications. And, everybody, you see everybody dialing in from home, and you see, in some ways, it's kind of like that equalizer. Everybody's kind of in that same situation. But I think it's a sense of just holding the space to be real. And then having leadership model that has been, I think, pretty powerful, because that just creates that space for everybody to also feel like they can just be real in the situation. If they're struggling a little bit, that's fine. And you get the support of the community. I've seen people support each other in a way that just feels almost like, I don't know, it's just more intimate than I think in a pre-COVID world would have been possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It does seem like it's almost, in some ways, COVID's like a fast forward button on getting to bedrock, you know, for better or for worse. But, you know, all of this sort of institutional amnesia and inefficiencies and, you know, even in our own lives, it seems like it's, it's like a giant eraser or like a big hammer that just kind of smashes some of that stuff to pieces. Tanner, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I just actually read a book. It's for managers, but I think anyone who's interested in leadership or better understanding, honestly, a lot of the points we just talked about being vulnerable, having a purpose, a shared purpose, those kind of things. The book is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a quick read, but I think it really highlights exactly how you create a very healthy community, one where you can have that trust, you have shared responsibility, you can delegate tasks and people will take care of them, and you can really feel like you belong there and you're safe. And really, it's everything we've already talked about. It's having that shared purpose. It's about being your real, authentic self, showing up every day and saying, like, you know, my house is a mess, my kids are going to run into my video, but I'm here for you, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff I think we need, not just in the COVID era, but also in other digital formats and email and thing. How are you being your authentic self and just showing up as another human? That in itself will start creating a safer space.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of what I might add to this. I think this idea of creating a sense of belonging is really important, and which gets us back to some of the DEI questions as well, right? And recognizing that how people want to show up is their choice. And so even working from home forces some things on us to expose parts of our lives that we may not want to. And this idea of bringing your whole self to something, whether it's your team or a community, I think is a really troubling narrative, because I think we should really give people permission to show up as how they want to, and that they should be safe in showing up in that way, whatever way that is. And so, you know, like at a team level, I might ask questions around, you know, how do you want to show up in ways that maybe you can't today? And let's talk about how we can create space for that, so we can truly have belonging for everyone. Or even right now in this time, like the way that we're working now, are there certain things that you want to create boundaries around? Let's talk about that, because it may be healthier for you. And so just being open to adapt and flex and quite frankly, just be compassionate with where everyone's at, so that we can create that space for belonging. It's when we make assumptions about what is or isn't belonging that I think we kind of get into a troubling space.
Yeah, well said. So we're at 11:30. I have one more question, and I know that that what follows this is a break. So Preet or Chantal, if you're listening, which I know you are, chat me and tell me don't ask this question. Okay, I got it, totally cool. Last question, and you all don't feel obligated to answer this, but I do want to end on a high positive note for everybody. So my last question is, what are the interesting, hopeful, and unique ways you've seen people come together during our present circumstances? I've seen an artist in New York do singing telegrams for free.
I was going to say that. Sorry, I was going to say this event, Remote Design Week. I'm pretty impressed at how it's so much more accessible because it's remote. You know, so it's like it's not necessarily just to replace an real in-person event, but it's got its own unique characteristics that has its also advantages, right? And just having the global spread and having the price be so accessible is just incredible to me.
Yeah, plus all the pets.
Plus all the pets.
Krispy Kreme.
I want to see Krispy Kreme.
Tanner or Mia, anything to add?
I love all the access to museums and things that we're getting right now, like watching the penguins and aquariums run around the aquarium. Like,
oh my God, the sea otters.
A new lens and view of these things that I think we cherish to sit in a particular box in a particular place. And I just love that we have access to that now in a really interesting, fun way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're kind of seeing now what the internet, I think, was ultimately really intended for, which is that connectivity. And another great example is Creative Mornings, which I don't know if you're aware, but they do phenomenal events all around the world. And now they're starting to do virtual events. So kind of like this one, there's no excuse not to like be able to tune in and hear from remarkable creatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Well, I have really enjoyed this discussion with you all this morning. I'm so honored to have it. I admire all of you. And everyone out there who's listening, I admire all of you too. So let's get out there and make design matter for folks and lead with our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. That was really amazing. I was, of course, listening to every single conversation happening, but also feeling almost the FOMO of being able to share more. And yeah, that was really amazing. And I'm so glad that we had Arianna moderate the panel. Did an amazing job at asking, of course, asking the questions and all, but keeping the conversation so candid and so real.